government to reduce the cost of living. But they could not point to any such efforts. If there's an effort to lower the cost of living, Kenyans will notice it. And Kenya Kwanza would not need to be explaining itself or struggling to explain itself. The truth is, there are no such efforts to lower the cost of living. How can raising of taxes on fuel from 8 to 16% be classified as an effort to lower the cost of living? Now, Kenya Kwanza is telling us that the government has hired some 55,000 teachers. Now, so what? That isn't a favor. They are supposed to be hiring teachers anyway. But they are missing the point. People eat food, and people want food. Even the teachers they are crying about. Even the teachers are crying about the cost of living and high taxes and low salaries. Hiring teachers doesn't reduce the cost of living. What is the point in hiring a teacher, then taking away his entire salary through taxes? What is the point in hiring workers and turning them into slaves? We encourage Kenya Kwanza to move past generalities of constantly reminding Kenyans that Kenya Kwanza is a legitimately elected government. People want food. People don't eat government, legitimate or illegitimate. Yeah. Give them food and they leave the streets. Yeah. The legitimacy or credibility of any government is seen in the way it governs and it treats people. If a regime is a failure, like Kenya Kwanza is, it does not matter how legitimate or otherwise it is, because people simply want food. Now, Kenya Kwanza is talking about the Hustler Fund and the plan to roll out the next phase and so on and so forth. Now, Kenya has never had a shortage of funds, like Youth Fund, Women Fund, and you can count them. And yet again, people don't eat funds, you know. People eat food. And people don't eat in faces. Yes, people eat today, okay? And every day. So don't tell Kenyans about Hustler Fund at its next phase. Just tell Kenyans how food will be affordable now, today. And they will leave the streets. Otherwise, if you don't do that, be ready to face these people in the streets for as long as it will take. Hire your militia, as many as you want to hire, but the people will not leave the streets. Yes. So I think I want to leave it at that point and ask my brother, the Honorable Leader, Senator Mazayo, to continue.
Continue from where my brother Opio has left. We do not understand Kenya Kwanza's obsession with saying and doing what Kenyans have not asked for. As far as we know, Kenyans have never asked for funds to be launched. Kenyans have specifically asked for the cost of goods to come down and taxes to be reduced. But Kenya Kwanza is talking about deficit and funds. We have seen Kenya Kwanza resorting to the tired and bigoted phrases like "load of violence." It won't work. People don't care. All that the people want is food. And decent standard of living. If Kenya Kwanza has a price of peace, has a prince of peace who can't provide food, no amount of character assassination of his challenger will sway Kenyans. People want food. We have seen Kenya Kwanza purport to be sharing with Kenyans the Right Honorable Raila Odinga's political history. How ridiculous can they get? We now challenge the same members of parliament to share with us the political history of William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua from 1990 to date. They started it. Let them go to the full length. We take note that the Kenya Kwanza MPs have threatened to mobilize their supporters to counter protesters whom they believe are supporters of Azimio. Again, Kenya Kwanza is missing the point and getting it wrong. The thousands of Kenyans turning up for protests are not just Azimio supporters. They are Kenyans from across all political and non-political formations who have been brought together by suffering. The protesters are from Azimio, Ford Kenya, ANC, and even Kenya Kwanza. The people realize they don't eat government. People eat food and they want food. People realize that having voted for a party or for a president who does not put food on the table, all the same, we welcome Kenyans. I will repeat that. People eat food and they want food. People realize that having voted for a party or a president does not put food on the table. All the same, we welcome Kenya Kwanza MPs to protests on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. If they come with violence and murder, Kenya Kwanza supporters will be among the victims. We take note that Kenya Kwanza members of parliament have resolved to cooperate with the police to ensure that there's no further loss of life and livelihoods. We know what this means. It means confirming protesters with members of that killer squad called Operation Support Unit, whose brief is to maim, kill protesters, including Azimio leaders. In this regard, we take great exceptions to the continued threats to life of our leader, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. As propagated by senior leaders of the Kenya Kwanza regime, there will be a price to pay for those threats. We are shocked that Kenya Kwanza is talking of those who orchestrate, plan, and finance violence, and occasion mass displacements of civilian population and business deemed to be owned by people from other communities. That sounds like Kenya Kwanza. The sponsors of the greatest violence and murder and displacements in Kenyan history are in Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza members of parliament need to know the history of the leaders of their parties, of their party. The men and women who have sponsored violence, evicted communities, and taken over their land and businesses are in Kenya Kwanza. It is clear that Kenya Kwanza is struggling on all fronts. We call on Kenyans to wake up to the reality that we are on our own and we have to fight for ourselves. In this regard, we acknowledge motorists for their participation in the last protests and encourage them to continue staying off the road on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in solidarity with all the Kenyans. Let's meet on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Thank you very much. Just two things to add on to that statement, that we have received intelligence that in fact senior police officers in the Kenyan Police Command have chosen to ignore the illegal directive that was given by CS Kindiki for police officers to shoot protesters. And that is the reason why the president convened a PG, because he knows the police will not do his dirty work. He has now told his own members of parliament to mobilize people in their constituencies to come and harm protesters. We want to say here to those of you who might be mobilized to come and fight your fellow Kenyans, we are not the enemy. We are not the ones who have added taxation on fuel. All these members of parliament here voted against that bill. You cannot come and fight your fellow hustlers in the streets. You cannot come from Madare and think that you are better than the person who comes from Kasarani. If Kenyans are sleeping hungry because of the price of food, the hustlers are sleeping hungry and members of Azimio are also sleeping hungry. For a president to convene a meeting where he sets his own people against each other, I think we have never come to such a law in this country. And we must condemn it in the strongest words possible. I want the people of Azimio to know we have won the argument. By the time you hear a professor of law like Kindiki saying he no longer wants to hear English or Swahili or constitutional concepts, it means we have won the argument. They have no answer to the questions that Kenyans are asking them. That is why a professor, somebody who should be encouraging discourse, constitutional discourse, and encouraging the development of law, would get to a point and he says, sasa hii kizungu imekuwa mingi, wajuaji Nairobi wamekuwa wengi, sasa tupige hao risasi. It means we have won the argument and they have no answers. Finally, we will not fight our fellow countrymen. I want to make it very clear. In Nairobi we live as a community. Kikuyu, Luya, Jaluo, kila mtu hapa. Saile Jaluo analala njaa, Muluya analala njaa, Mkikuyu analala njaa. We will not fight our fellow countrymen. In fact, some of these members of parliament who talk, you know, we are with them in the Senate. Mtu kama Cherargei, yeye anaweza piga nani hapa mbele vile mnaona hapa. Who can Cherargei fight here? Eh? He talks like that because he knows he's going to hide behind the instruments of violence of the state. Senator Cherargei, instead of organizing your boys to come and fight peaceful demonstrators, just come and fight Sifuna. Hey, akuje tu tukutane watu wawili. Lastly, they are crying and saying, oh, this signature thing is going nowhere. But they are actively sabotaging the collection of signatures. We have had over 1,000 attacks on our website that is being used for collection of signatures. They have even cloned the website to try and, confuse our supporters. But we are saying Kenyans want to eat, and they want to eat today. It doesn't matter how long you cover your ears. Tutapiga hiyo masikio kofi mpaka ifunguke. Usikie kilio ya Wakenya. Asante sana.
Honorable Enoch Wamboa.
I'll also be very brief. I will say three things. One, we must structure this conversation properly. The conflict that we are experiencing today and that we will experience on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday is not a conflict between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. That conflict happened on the 9th of August, yes, and we won it. Yes. The conflict that we are going to experience on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is a conflict between one William Samoei Ruto and the people of Kenya. That's what's happening. I was really surprised to see Honorable Ruto calling honorable members and telling them to go and mobilize their people, their constituents, to fight us. Actually, I would say I am ashamed on his behalf. because the people from those constituencies, some of them are suffering even more than people in constituencies represented by Azimio. And let me tell you what will happen on Wednesday. And I'm not a prophet, but I can foresee this. Any member of parliament, any leader from Kenya Kwanza, who dares to stop their people from saying they are starving. That's what all people are saying. We want food. That's what they are saying. Any member that dares to stop his people from saying that, then that member will be forced by his people to say other things.
Yes.
Lastly, we are at the lowest that any democracy can sink. At the lowest. And you know, myself and Senator Sifuna, we were in the bipartisan talks. And when we realized that we were being taken for a ride, we said, stop any conversation about anything else. Let us talk about food for our people. And that conversation will take place on Wednesday, on Thursday, and Friday. And if people are uncomfortable with that, I have a solution for them. Bring down the cost of living today. And we will not be on the streets on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I thank you.
Ken Chonga.
Wakenya wenzangu, ukweli wa mambo ni kwamba chenye Mheshimiwa Ruto hajaelewa ni kuwa msukumo huu, maandamano haya si vita baina ya Ruto na Raila. Maandamano haya, msukumo huu umeletwa kwa sababu hali ya maisha haiwezi ikakidhika tena. Mwenye alisimama na Ruto, mwenye alisimama na Raila, wote leo shida ni zile moja. Na Ruto, mimi nataka kumwambia kitu kimoja. Serikali ambayo haiwezi ikatetea wengi ambao ni wanyonge, haitaweza kutetea wachache walio watajiri. Wale ambao wanalia njaa leo, wawe ni Azimio, wawe ni Kenya Kwanza, ni wale wanyonge. Mtoto hawezi kulilia chakula ukampe mawe. Watu wanataka chakula, unawaletea vitisho ati tutakuua. Wale walio kuchagua wewe leo, kama kwako huwezi kuona maana, ni kitu gani kitakuwa na maana kwako tena? Wacha hii ieleweke. Wacha Ruto aelewe, asikie. Hakuna vitisho ambavyo kwamba atavitoa ili watu waweze kunyamaza na kuvumilia. Watu wanataka chakula leo. Watu wanataka chakula kesho. Ndio ili vizazi ambavyo vinakuja vijue kwamba vimezaliwa katika karne ambayo kwamba inajali maslahi ya wananchi ambao wapo. Na watu wakikosa chakula, Ruto ajitahadhari. Mbali na maandamano, mambo zaidi yako nyuma ya mfuata. Asante.
You are aware that the United Nations has pronounced itself on the situation in the country, especially on the issue of police brutality and the killings that went on during the demonstration. I want to state very clearly that the earlier petition by Azimio to ICC is very active, and we want to encourage the United Nations and ICC to note the events of this week. One, the President William Ruto chaired a meeting that planned anarchy on the people of Kenya at State House. Number two, the suspension of the Constitution by those in KK Alliance, particularly Article 37 of the Constitution. Three, the killings that went on last week. And as Azimio, we have profiled all the people who died, and all of them died as a result of shootings by the police. Thirdly, the statements attributed to one Kindiki, who ironically was a lawyer at the ICC. 2, Gachagua. And 3, Moses Kuria threats on Baba. We are asking ICC, please take note of what is happening in this country so that we have the commencement of our petition before the ICC so that these people are brought to book. And lastly, we are aware, we have information that governors, and some of them as mere governors, have been instructed to spend county money on hiring militias to attack people. We are asking governors that we are watching you. Any money spent to pay goons to attack peaceful demonstration shall be recovered from you, and you will be prosecuted for using public money to organize goons to attack peaceful demonstrators. Thank you.
We have got a very short statement here to make, and further comments by a few of us. But I must start from the outset by saying that we are making this statement against
sasa imekuwa KU. Kwa hivyo hakuna mimi kitu sijui na hakuna kitu nasikia hiyo. Furahishe watu na niongee maneno. Nitaongea maneno machungu lakini maneno iliyo na mazao. Iliyo na mazao. Kwa sababu hata wewe umekuja hapa kutafuta riziki yako. Isn't it? Isingekuwa ni riziki ungekuja hapa. Nasi tumesimama hapa yale, na hii haitawezekana kama tutaweka maombi mbele. Kwa hivyo nitamatishe na kusema ni shukrani kuu kwa wale wamekaa kwa muda, especially zile zilianza 2020 na wamekuwa hawana stima. Wale wapande ile nimesema hiyo kitu ilikuweko imekufa, tutaanza na ile iko inaweza kuvuka haraka kwa sababu vingingi vilikuweko ni kilima, vilikuwa zimepitishwa hapa Makuyu, ni kilima bogo tu. Actually hata mimi nikisimama pale nilikuwa nafikiria ati nimefufua kwa sababu nilituma kasikiwa kama 5. Sasa hizi zote nimesoma. Kama umesikia area yako, tafadhali uwe na subira. Haya mambo tuko ngangari na tunaheshimika kwa sababu hata sisi tunaheshimu watu. Tukiingia kwa ofisi hatutoki bure. Nasikia? Kwa hivyo mimi nitamatishia hapo na nipore kwa kuongea mengi. Na niulize kama kuna jambo ambalo linakera tusikie tu. Mengine hakuko stima, na kama sikutaja area yako useme ndio maana